Next slot is Jamie Manning from Touch Applications. He's Manager, Global Digital Communications. Oh, there he is. Welcome to stage. He'll be talking about closing the loop, empowering responsive and engage a global sales force. Since we didn't have the time to talk before, what passion is driving you in your job?
Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge.
Knowledge.
And simplicity, and I'll be talking about both.
Very nice.
Yeah.
The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. A special thank you to the folks at we.CONECT for having me here. It is my pleasure and my honor. It is 3 in the afternoon on the second day, so clearly all of our heads are filled with knowledge, and I'm experiencing some jet lag, but I think we will make this work nonetheless. I'm certainly excited to do so. So, in a nutshell, what I'm going to be talking about, it's a case study about our global sales force, and I'll tell you about R in just a second, but how do you connect a global sales force? How do you get them to share knowledge, ideas, leads? How do you get them to help each other? And most important, how do you get that global sales force to interact with those behind the firewall, so to speak, who can provide them that knowledge that they need to move the bottom line forward? Okay, so just a few things about me. I am the digital communications lead for Biogen Idec, which is a pharma company based out of Massachusetts in the United States. I've been doing this sort of work, the kind of work we're all talking about, for 15 years now, external solutions, internal solutions, with a specific focus on UX and driving home the need for simplicity. So at this point, I've done about 5 enterprise sales type applications, so a lot of good stuff that I can share and talk about. For those of you who don't know Biogen Idec, it is one of the largest independent biotechs worldwide, focused on multiple sclerosis, hemophilia, and other neurodegenerative diseases. And right now, we are more than 6,000 employees. When I joined the company 5 years ago, we were 2,800. So the company has seen tremendous growth, based mostly to a very rich pipeline of new therapies coming online. So a quick bit of context. As we all know, those of us, it doesn't matter really the industry, salespeople are having a more and more difficult time trying to grab the attention of their constituents. In our case, those constituents are doctors, right, or HCPs, as we call them in the industry. The short amount of time they have has to be extremely focused, extremely relevant, or they've completely not been able to do their job correctly, right? Sometimes you will have, let's think of a typical scenario where you have prepared for weeks as a sales rep to go into a hospital or go into a doctor's office and have a meeting. You're in the hospital, and then you find out that the doctor is getting ready for emergency surgery in 2 hours and can maybe give you 10 minutes max, right? So whereas you thought you had 30, 40 minutes, now you have 10 minutes. So it's always about compressing the knowledge, making it as simple as possible, and getting to the root of the story immediately. To do that, sales reps have to have up to the minute, or really up to the second, knowledge from the people who support them, so that they don't walk into that doctor's office and potentially do something foolish, like say, I'm going to talk to you about this product, when the doctor says, excuse me, but one of your colleagues was in here just a half hour ago talking about that exact same product. These things do happen. So the kind of applications that need to be built are designed to make sure that doesn't happen, which helps both that sales rep and, of course, the company's brand reputation. So here's the problem in a nutshell, right? Our European sales force was using a product called Oracle On Demand, which is a Oracle product, so I already have some issues there, personally. And it's really Siebel, for those of you who know Siebel, CRM platform, very old in the tooth. It's been around a long time. Oracle bought Siebel, and they decided to just take the Siebel platform and stick it online. And what happened is the performance absolutely plummeted, right? So there was a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction among all of our sales reps because it would literally take them sometimes as many as 2 to 3 minutes to log into the application, right? And 2 to 3 minutes when you're trying to log in and you're stressed and you're busy, that's forever, and we all know that. Because of that, of course, very low rates of usage. And as a result, what was really happening is that the sales reps, rather than go online and contribute to this CRM platform, were simply taking their notebooks, using their local desktop, writing their own notes, and eventually sending information into the CRM when it suited them, even if they remembered, right? So really, we were getting very little information into the CRM, and what information we were getting was generally inaccurate because it could have been days old for that sales rep, okay? So what did that mean? Our sales efforts, particularly in Europe, were uncoordinated, very inefficient, and often redundant, right? 3 things that are not going to help anybody in the organization, sales rep or not a sales rep. So what happened is that the sales team came to my team to have a discussion, right? They said, look, we cannot use this product anymore. It's clearly not functioning. It takes me 10, 12, 15 minutes to do one thing. I don't have that kind of time, right? The other thing they talked about is that they needed up-to-the-minute information, as I said. The typical routine in the past was that sales rep would go to his or her home office in the morning, log in, find out what appointments they had for that day, write them down on paper, right? Go, take a bunch of paper, stick it in their car to throw out a rep, check this schedule all day, having no idea if a doctor was available to see them, if their schedule had changed, or any of the things that would actually help them do their job. So that's the first thing we discussed, okay? And what we decided to do is rather than have them continue to use the Oracle On Demand product, what we were going to do is build a mobile application that simply tied into the database behind the Oracle application. Because the problem wasn't the database. Oracle makes outstanding databases. It's the user interface that was the problem. Extremely complicated. I wish I had a screenshot. I wasn't allowed to make one, but you just would not believe it. 17 different colors and buttons everywhere. You've been there, you know. So the second thing we talked about, okay, are we going to build something or are we going to buy something? What is available out there in the world that we could potentially buy, that's extensible, that we can use over time, that's going to be a benefit? Or do we just make the decision to build this with all the problems that could potentially happen when you do build something? The next decision we had to make was, is this going to be a native application? We're going to build it within the platform. Are we going to build it for an iPad, or are we going to build it for a Droid? Or are we going to build this as a web application that plays well on a device, right? And of course, the benefit there is that when you build a web application, it plays anywhere if you build it right, right? So it doesn't matter if you're on a tablet, sitting at your desk, whatever. The application is the application. It plays nice wherever you are. Thirdly, third big decision is it had to have offline capabilities, right? Because when you're in a hospital, often there are issues with pacemakers and other medical devices that can be set off by a mobile device. So they had to be able to go into that hospital, shut off their mobile access, and still be able to use this application, right? Typically, that's not as much of a problem when you're using a platform-specific device. Of course, web, it's a little more difficult, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so this is the approach we came up with. And I mean this in all sincerity. Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. It is the absolute number one thing that, in my opinion, including myself, we all do that kills projects, is we don't make it simple. It's a very difficult thing to do. That's why, because when we are the maker of an application, right, we think about all the things it could do, all the fabulous possibilities, all the amazing things that it could do 5 years from now, right? but we don't often enough take into account the day-to-day life of those who need to use it. The thing I like to say as a joke is, why do we build applications that we would never use ourselves, right? It just doesn't make sense. So we really took that to heart. And, you know, a verbatim from a UK field rep, keep it simple. It was just such a mandate for us as we went through this process. So, what we did is form a partnership, a very close partnership with our European sales reps, right? We got inside their heads. They allowed us to get inside their heads. We had meeting after meeting after meeting, as many as we could, to say to them, tell us exactly what your day is like. Don't hold anything back, right? What are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things that give you the most problems? What works? What doesn't work, right? What are the barriers for you to sharing the knowledge that you do have? What information would be helpful for you to pull in to your world so that you can be more effective as a sales rep? To do that, myself and several of my team members went on ride-alongs with the sales reps, which was just fabulous because we got to see for ourselves how this works, right? You know, we went into the offices with them. We watched them to the extent that we could, because a lot of these meetings have to be private. But to the extent we could, we watched them sit and talk with the doctor, the kind of questions they asked, the kind of things they needed to do. We watched as they left that office and started jotting notes down into a paper notebook, right, which, of course, is about as dead end as we have nowadays. And then we had continual status meetings at every point along the way. For those who are in the technical world, it was a very agile-driven process, right? We didn't start here and then say nothing, and end here, right? We took very small steps, and at each step we talked, and we met to make sure we didn't get too far into this process without constant and continual feedback from those users. So the status meetings started weekly. They went to twice a week, and towards the end, we were talking daily with sales reps, with offshore developers, with ourselves, with vendors, to make sure that everybody was enrolled in this process, everybody knew what they needed to do, and everybody understood that the number one thing we needed to do was share knowledge for the benefit of the bottom line as a business and for making the lives of these people who are working hard for the company as easy as possible and to make them as successful as possible. So, briefly, again, for those who are in the IT world or development world, this is the stack we used, right? So our decision was we were going to build this web. We were not going to build a native application. We were going to build this for the web. Why? Because we, like other companies that I've heard and we've talked about, now have a BYOD policy, right? So we had no idea. We could not predict exactly what a sales rep was going to be doing or using for his or her job. Maybe it's an Apple device, maybe it's a Droid device, who knows, right? We had to play well, and we had to be rock solid on any application. They could also work this on their computer at night, in the morning if they wanted to. So to do that, this is probably I would say the cutting edge and the most commonly used stack for building these kind of things now. HTML5, which is absolutely critical if you want to build a web-based app that has offline capabilities, right? Which is why we went there. CSS3, JavaScript, JSON, which is a technology that basically helps you move data from the front end to the back end cleanly and simply and quick. And then it had a Java back end, right? And then we use web services called REST services to basically move that data back and forth very efficiently. And then we went with a library called Sencha. Sencha is basically a product that puts a layer over that stack you just saw and allows you to do a lot of work on a meta level, so to speak, and build one set of code and be able to quickly move that out to a web app, to a mobile device, to whatever it is, right? So that was very helpful for us. And again, for those of you who are building these sort of things, I would highly recommend them and others like them. So this is our ecosystem now, right? So let me cut to the chase, as I'm going to be talking about and showing you some screen caps in a minute. we were able ultimately to build successfully a mobile application for our sales force that was dead-on simple, that was very highly predictable for them, so that they knew exactly what to do, they knew exactly when to do it, and they knew why they were doing it, and they didn't have to think so much. And I mean that with all due respect. What I mean by think, of course, is they didn't need to think, where is that stupid button, right? They didn't have to think about that because it was right there and it was bright red. So it makes it simple. I don't know if, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is a European product, but we have Fisher-Price toys in America, right? And that was the mantra, make it Fisher-Price, meaning make it so that a 4-year-old could use it. Because if a 4-year-old can use it, then an adult is going to absolutely love it in terms of technology, okay? So basically, again, on the technical track, what you're seeing there, of course, is the application itself, which in this context is on an iPad. We built what's called a DMZ, or basically a server that takes the data from that mobile application, puts it in a format that Oracle On Demand can understand, and moves it over, right? And by doing that, we were able to basically make it almost real time so that a sales rep enters information. Within 5 seconds goes to Oracle On Demand. Within another 5 seconds comes back to the device. So we are almost at absolute real time. Why is that important? Because again, the one thing we learned in talking to the sales reps is that they go into the doctor's office, they say a few things, they get some potential commitment or a request for some kind of literature. They leave that office, they need to know immediately, or they need to put down immediately the notes for that application, right? Because soon it becomes out of mind, because then you're getting in your car, you're driving to another location, you know, the knowledge evaporates. So knowledge needs to be captured very quickly for people who are on the road like this. They don't have time to say, oh yeah, I'll remember that later, and then it's gone, right? Poof. And then we lost all kinds of knowledge. So we build it so that you leave the doctor's office, few clicks of a button, I did this is what happened, this is the result, here's a quick note, boom. That's all you need, right? Something is far better than nothing. So what's going to happen in the future? The ecosystem of the future, pardon me, has a very large component with social, right? And that is absolutely key. And I know we've been talking a lot about this during the conference. It really hits home for me and for us. Because let's think of another scenario. I am a sales rep. I am talking to this HCP, this healthcare provider, who has given me absolutely nothing in return, right? I don't know why. Does he or she not like me? Is there something I'm doing wrong? What's going on here? I need to be able to reach out to my colleagues within the organization to see if someone can help me, right? Why is that? Because you don't know that potentially someone who is a junior associate in the manufacturing facility in Hillerød, Denmark, that we have, might have a personal relationship with that HCP. That is gold, and you have to mine that gold. That, for me, is one of the key components of having a social network within your organization, because you just don't know who has the knowledge that you need to be successful. Right? You know, we break things down into these silos. Well, I'm a sales rep, so I'm going to talk to the people who would, manage the sales reps, and that's all. That's my sphere. No, that's what social does, is it breaks all that apart, and it says, I am a sales rep, and here is my universe of people with whom I can interact. I can throw some knowledge out there, right? And based on the context of that information that I'm putting out there, based on the keywords that I use, that can match up with someone, that junior associate in manufacturing, who is using similar keywords. It's got to go to him or her, and they're going to say, bingo, I know this person, I can help. And they send it back to that sales rep, and it makes it much better because, of course, the next time you go in your office, hey, do you know Joe Schmo? Oh, Joe Schmo, of course I know Joe Schmo. Let's talk. Then you're getting warmer, right? The lead gets warmer, and then you eventually get yourself to a sale, right? Social. So that's where we're going with the future of this thing. That's what's exciting about this, is that we are going to now have a fully globally connected sales force, a sales force that talks to each other, which in and of itself is new, right? You know, in the past, sales reps are more into hoarding their leads, right? It does, you know, the way we've set up our structure now is that it's okay to talk to each other. And you have to build the ether that allows these people to talk to each other. And that's, again, that's social. That's the combination of this mobile application that we built and the social infrastructure we're putting underneath it, so that, again, you don't just talk to one person, you're talking to your fellow sales reps, you're talking to your entire manufacturing base, your medical affairs team, whoever it is. You have a whole universe of people who can now help you. So, what was the downside of all this? Certainly it wasn't a perfect project, and certainly it continues to not be a perfect project, but that's okay, because it's been a successful project. So, here's what we learned. New technology, as we all know, again, I know you know this, new technology can be scary for users and developers, right? So there's some risks that you sometimes just need to take, and we took them, and we paid for them, right? I have the scars on my back to prove it, that sometimes you are going to have to take a leap of faith, and you're going to have to make some people angry. What I mean by that is, the people who get angry typically aren't the salespeople, it's your management, right? It's like, why did you make this decision? What's going on? I'm looking bad. That hurts, right? But it has to happen sometimes. And again, more importantly, it can be very scary for the users, right? And I know we've talked about this in a lot of the breakout sessions, et cetera, is that people just get used to doing things a certain way for a certain reason because I've been successful. And the analogy I used earlier is an analog to the investing world, where a study proved that people are more afraid to lose money than they are excited to make more money. So you're battling that when you're introducing a new technology. You're battling that fear that people have that, oh my God, is this gonna, you know, am I gonna lose my bonus because this thing doesn't work? Is this, you know, all those fears are gonna run through their head. It takes a lot to push people over that hump. Secondly, iterate, iterate, iterate. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I talked about an agile process, right? When you build this app, you don't say, okay, we are going to build the first 75% of this thing and then see what the sales reps think. No, you go in 1% increments to the point where it's potentially annoying to your audience. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is getting 90% of the way there and having someone say, oh, why didn't you do this? I could have used this, right? When you go in 1% increments, when you build a small part of this application, you immediately go to your users and say, what do you think? Is this what you were talking about? Does this match what you feel? Is this going to make you successful? And you do that with every single 1% of the application you build, you are almost guaranteed success at the end, right? Assuming you've talked to everybody that you can possibly talk to, so that you can find some consensus, so you can find some common denominators, and make it work. Third, I'll go back to the Fisher-Price. It is critical that your V1, that out of the gate, your first product, have far fewer features than you'd like it to have, but each feature is just wonderful for the user base. That is how you get adoption, right? Again, we've all been through this. We went through this with the Oracle On Demand product. You know, suddenly you pull up the screen and you look at this monstrosity and you say, I'm never going to use this. Forget it. Ain't me. I'm going to fail. It's clear I'm going to fail. I don't even know where the logout button is. Ain't going to happen. So V1 needs to be very simple. Maybe 3 things, right? V1 allows a sales rep to, when they leave the doctor's office, say, this is what I did. This is the outcome. This is my next anticipated action. That's it. Very simple. Because they will actually use that. And that's what you want at the end of the day, is you want people to use these things so that you can get that knowledge. So by making it simple and by making it highly effective, you're going to get what you want ultimately, which is people who actually use this thing and are actually kind of excited to use it because they start to see the benefits. Then you go to V2 and you add another 2 features, another 3 features down the line, so that by the time you are at V6, and this is a really robust and full-featured application, they're okay with it because that logout button is never going to move, right? New features will be introduced, but those features that you introduced earlier are not going to change. Not unless there is substantial communication ahead of time. Just like technology can be scary, and again, preaching to the choir, nobody likes change. Nobody likes surprises, right? If the sales rep opens up that app one day, and the big red button that they used to love, and I'm going to hit it, is now over here, and then you're toast. It's just not going to work. So you have to over and hyper communicate, right? So I love that quote from Einstein: everything should be made as simple as possible, but not more simple than that, or not simpler, right? So what does that mean? It means you boil down your application to the fewest number of elements that can make it successful, but you don't go further than that, because then you get into that zone where you just haven't built enough. Okay, so this was the outcome of the build so far. It is currently in use and localized throughout the world. Thank you. We have versions in English, French, German, Spanish, Czech, and several other languages. Again, we leveraged HTML5 to do this for us, so we didn't have to build the iPad version in Czech, the iPad version in German, the iPad version in this. No, we use a simple technique that the device knows who's accessing the app, where they're accessing it from, and they get the version that's appropriate to them when it happens. Okay? And now we've achieved success with this. It's in use worldwide. So now we're going to iterate for some of the newer products we have coming out, such as hemophilia and other future therapeutics. And I want to generally wrap up by one success story. I think, again, technology community, people say, HTML5, no, forget it, man. It's just the spec isn't mature enough, and it isn't going to work. You have to go native. Not true. And the best thing about it was that there was an American counterpart to this application, somewhat of a counterpart. That American counterpart was built native for Apple devices, and I smile when I say this. When Apple iOS upgraded to version 7, the American application absolutely crashed, and ours just sailed right through, right? So it can work. It can be successful using a technology that does not recognize boundaries, that does not lock you to a certain device, that does not hold you, and does, of course, cannot possibly work with BYOD. And with that, I'll wrap up. I've talked a lot. I had some screen caps. They're not perfectly relevant. I think what's important here to remember is that to be fully social, you have to have a worldwide dialogue with every single one of your employees. You cannot assume, ever, that someone doesn't know something, because you just don't know who knows what, right? And that's exactly the approach we took here. We're allowing our sales reps to reach out to the whole universe within Biogen Idec. People who have worked at 20 other pharma companies with massive connections. So really, when you're talking to just the people within Biogen, you're really talking to 50,000 people, because then they can reach out to someone. Someone has the answer. And you just need to make it easier for that answer to be ascertained, so that you can go to that HCP office and say, how you doing? I know what you want. I know why you want it, because this person told me what you want. So let's make this happen. They're effective. They're happy. And we're successful together. Thank you.